All right, rolling along. TBEST transit system validation. So now that we have our model run for our base set up, all of our characteristics set up, we're going to work on the validation part. All right, so our high-level TBEST validation process, configure the base year network scenario complete, run the TBEST model complete. We're running it, so it's going to be complete. We want to then set up our validation, and we do that by using the route patterns and putting them into collections. And a note there, they must be the same route type and mode. So what collections means is that you're grouping your route patterns to the level of the ridership data that you have, your observed ridership. So let's say that you're a small transit agency, and really all you know is I have one ridership number for all of my routes. I don't really know what all of them are individually, but I know in total we have 500 riders per day. So what I can do then is basically just set all of my routes into a single collection and then input the ridership for all of the routes. And then that is the collection that matches my observed ridership, right? So you're basically saying, well, if I have a ridership at the route level, then I can segment out my collections at the route level and then input my ridership data to match that. So you're just trying to match up with your observed ridership, your collections. So this will become evident to you. Yeah, so once we have our collections defined, number 4 is enter route level observed ridership for each collection. And we'll do that at the route level, of course. And then at 5, run the TBEST model validation procedure to calculate the route level adjustment factors. So what it's going to do when you run the validation, it's going to compare what TBEST predicts in terms of its ridership estimation without validation and compare it to the observed, which is, what your actual production levels are, and then create adjustment factors to do a fitting so that the observed, the TBEST estimated will match the observed. So when you then use that out into a forecast mode, you have a fitting mechanism to apply to your ridership estimation out into the future. All right. So and then after the validation, you can actually see the adjustment factors at the route level and it can evaluate them. Okay, so the validation access menu is relative to a scenario, right? So in this case, we're looking at the April 2025 TBEST scenario. We right-click on it, it goes to the validation menu option. And then there are 3 options: route collections, collection, observed ridership. So these are the 3 that correspond over here, where we're going to step through these to actually validate our transit system based on the base conditions that are contained in our April 2025 scenario. Okay. All right, so the first step is to basically match up our collections, right? So we have a list of collections over on the left. So by default, whenever you import your GTFS for the first time, it will automatically create collections and match them up at the route level. So a lot of this is already done for you, creating these collections. However, you can use this tool to just enter a collection name and hit the add button, and it will add one for a route that you need. And in this case, maybe Route 150. We have available routes over here on the right. We need to get those into a collection. So we type in Route 150, hit add, and then we can move those over into a collection that we then can put some observed ridership in relative to that route. So basically, this is the setup for creating the collections. And you can use these buttons in the middle to move these route patterns over into a collection or back out of a collection into available routes. When you're done with this, basically, when you're setting up your validation, you shouldn't have any routes in available routes or route patterns. This should be empty. This list should be empty. Everything should be in a collection, right? So just keep that in mind when you're setting up the validation. This available routes list should be empty when you're done. Okay. All right, so here is the observed ridership entry. So essentially what you do is supply average ridership count data for weekday, Saturday, and Sunday at the route level in this case, but I mentioned it's really at the collection level. So whatever observed ridership data that you have, you would group your routes into collections to match that ridership data. So if available, use the most recent 6 months of ridership data to calculate an average input day. So typical service days during the year with normal ridership patterns. So holidays and school calendars, maybe, et cetera, are encouraged to be left out. So like if you have special trips on Friday for schools, if it's just really a Friday thing or something like that, maybe those are left out. And certainly holidays on that would occur on a weekday would be left out. So users enter observed ridership directly, or it can be copied into the table from a spreadsheet. So this is the table that we're working with to enter the ridership data. So this can be exported to Excel when it's empty, and then you can fill it in Excel, all of your collections that you would have, but you would fill them in Excel. Once you have them in Excel, because it's easier to compile over there, you just copy and paste out of Excel into this so that it's very simple to fill this out. Notice that you too have this load from stop ridership. So if you have APC data in your transit system, in your base scenario, you can load and fill this out directly from the APC data. So that kind of takes the compiling away, and it will just automatically aggregate your APC data into all these levels. So you don't really even have to fill this out mechanically. You can just click this button and it just fills it out. So that's one of the benefits of having your stop level APC data in your transit system. Okay. All right, so what is the result of a model validation? Okay, TBEST calculates route level, route collection level ridership adjustment factors to be applied during model application. And so model application is whenever we create an alternative scenario that might have a new route in it or change service, whenever TBEST runs its model, it will project ridership and then it will apply an adjustment factor to that ridership that is the adjustment factor that best matches the production levels that were observed in the base, right? So basically it's creating these adjustments as a fitting mechanism, but is still sensitive to the service changes and other changes in the network. So another thing that it does is it locks the model definition files for the transit system. So essentially you can't, once you've validated a model, you can't go and change any of the parameters for the model. It locks it, right? So which is just a protection against, you know, making a change that would basically corrupt your model by making changes to the underlying model structure. You wouldn't want to do that. The validation input network scenario becomes read-only. So in our case, we had the spring 2025 as the example that we gave on the screen capture. That one became read-only and the base scenario. Okay, so this is just what it looks like after the fact. So post-validation, your TBEST Explorer scenario. You have your 2025 is your validation year for Gatorville. Our April 2025 becomes base read-only. And then we're going to create TDP scenarios, which are our application scenarios for our TDP, right? So we're going to get to this point where we're base and read-only, and then have our TDP scenarios where we're creating alternative networks and service. Okay, so just to look at the adjustment factor. So after validation, what we can do is come into the validation adjustment factors. There's a option if you right click on your transit system, your base scenario, you can come in and look at these validation factors at the route level. And basically a factor of 1 is a perfect match between the TBEST ridership estimation and the observed ridership. If the factor is greater than 1, then TBEST has underestimated versus the observed. If the factor is less than 1, then TBEST has overestimated versus the observed. So it gives you an idea on a route level how well the overall fitting is with what TBEST predicts relative to what the observed is, and also how it's going to be adjusted, right? So these are just letting you know that each one of these routes is going to be adjusted in a certain way. All right. So there is a case, of course, where you have a brand new route that wasn't in your validation. So you had put together for your validation collections of routes that existed. So in your alternative scenarios, you are going to create new routes. So what happens then? You don't have a direct adjustment factor because that route did not exist in the base. So what happens? So basically, it will take an average of all of the routes of the same type or technology, like bus or rail, and the same route type, and create an average adjustment factor for all the routes that meet that criteria. So then you get an average adjustment factor for any new routes, right? For weekday, Saturday, and Sunday service. So in this case, we have a 0.26 adjustment factor for this Route 52 and 88. Those are new radio routes. And this is the average adjustment as calculated from all the existing adjustments that happened for their routes that were in the base year. Okay, so finally, as you are going along, you may get to a point where you need to, after you've validated it, you've had the transit system validated for a while, maybe 2 years, maybe a year, and you see, well, there's new SE data. There are major service changes in the network that we want to revalidate to. Maybe we made a mistake and we need to go back and revalidate. It can be anything, but you have the ability to remove the validation on a transit system and then revalidate it based on changes that you've make to the base year or to the socioeconomic data. So just keep that in mind that you can remove the validation. The TBEST user guide, section 6.6, has more information on removing overall validation procedures. Okay, so I think there was one question. Can you elaborate on the adjustment factor or fitting method? I think we've covered it. Charles, I'm not sure if you have any more that you would like to know about it, but certainly we did talk about it a good bit. So
Yeah, for context, he asked the question before covering that slide.
oh yes, right. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, let's run through our validation collections exercise. We have about 15 minutes to do this, but where are we at in time wise? It's 2:15. So yeah, so after this exercise, we'll just take a break and then we'll come back and move into some network editing, which will be fun. So, all right, so let's go forward with transit system validation. Again, if you would like to go and into the breakout room and work without narration, feel free. Otherwise, we'll continue here with the next steps. All right, so my model finished. I know you guys probably saw it as we were running. It popped up and said that it was finished, so that's good. So I'll just close the ridership estimation model. And before we move on, just I'll show you for the fall 2024, we have this model status. So once you have a valid model run, it will show you that it's valid here for each of the time periods. If it's not valid, meaning you've made an edit that invalidated the ridership estimation model for this scenario, then it will tell you that here as well. So you can always come here and check to see if you have a valid model run. And then if you need to rerun it, you can. Okay. So I'm in entering routes in validation collections. So this is part 1 of the transit system validation exercises. In TBEST Explorer, right-click on the fall 2024 scenario and select validation route collections. So I will minimize this and just do that. And right-click on my fall 2024 and select validation route collections. Great. In the validation route collections dialog, verify that the list of route collections is consistent with the routes in the TBEST Fall 2024 scenario network. Since Route 150 is new in the Fall 2024 network, a corresponding route collection needs to be added. So what we're going to do is add Route 150 here and click Add. So in our list of all the collections, we did not have a Route 150. It is empty. We can see that 7-Eleven has 3 patterns in it. 126 has patterns, 122, 121. All of those look correct to me. All the patterns that are on 118 are in this list. That's right. So I'm going to click on 150. I'm going to select the two 150 patterns. I'm going to click the left arrow to push those into that collection. So that looks right to me, where you're able to set up your collection with all of the route patterns that are in for 150. So what we want to do is the same thing for Route 127. It is also new. So we're going to say Route 127 here and click Add. And again, it adds it to our list. It's empty. We're just going to select those two available routes and push those into the route collection. So as I mentioned in the slides, what our target was is to have no available routes. We want all of our routes patterns to be in collections. So basically all of these collections are full, and you might want to go through and check and see, yes, this looks right. 25, all of our 25 patterns are in here, 23, 21, 22. And maybe you have one that's empty. You can just delete it if you need to, right? So it's up to you to kind of manage these collections, make sure that it matches up and that all of your available routes are out and inside of route collections. Okay, so I've moved to part 2, entering route validation collection observed ridership. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that dialog, the route collections dialog, and we're going to enter route validation collection ridership. So right click on our fall 2024 scenario, select validation collection observed ridership. Okay, so this is empty, which is good. We want it to be empty. And I mentioned earlier that, this can be used as a template. So if I export this to Excel, it comes out as a spreadsheet, and you can fill in the ridership data inside of Excel and then copy it from Excel into TBEST, right? So it just is an easier way to do this rather than cell by cell and not having formulas and all that you might be able to compile data a little quicker using Excel and enter it in. So to that point, what we want to do is in our step 2, step 3, to access the Gatorville ridership, open the Windows File Explorer and navigate to the TBEST 5 Transit Systems Gatorville Data Validation folder and open the CSV, the Fall 2024 Gatorville ridership CSV. So we can do that. So we'll go to our C drive and go to TBEST 5, go to Transit Systems, Gatorville, Data, and then we have our validation folder right here. And we have Fall 2024 Gatorville ridership. So we can just double click on that. All right, great. So we have our ridership data here already compiled for us, of course. So we're not going to go through and compile ridership data. You would request that from your operations folks that would say, hey, can you give me an average or aggregate ridership data over a period of time? Or maybe they give you the source files for it and you do the aggregation yourself. So this can come in many ways, but the point is that you're aggregating over a certain period of time the average daily ridership for weekday and Saturday and Sunday over the service period from your original GTFS, right? So all we really need to do to populate this into TBEST is just use a basic Excel selection, click and hold and drag just drag down to the end of our Route 711. So we have all of this selected. Hit Control C to copy it to the clipboard. and come over to TBEST and come into our first cell, our Route 1 weekday cell, and hit Control V, and it will populate it over into TBEST. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so that's it. So we just say okay. And so what we want to do next is before we run the model validation procedure, we want to create an export file from this because if we made a mistake, let's say in our validation, there's some mistake that we have, it's a little bit easier to go back to a copy of it that is right at the point of validation than to remove the validation and have to go through a couple of extra steps to get to the point where we can then revalidate it. So just as a protection to say, well, okay, if we need to come back to this readily, we can very much do it just by making a TBEST export file from it. So I'm just going to right click on Gatorville, select export to a TBEST system export file. And I think we're going to put this on the desktop. Yes, so put it on the desktop. Gatorville.tbest is fine. We can actually call it pre-validation so that we know that this is our pre-validation TBEST export of the transit system. And just say save. All right, so fantastic. Now we have a backup of this. So if we need to come back to it and revalidate it, we can. All right, so next step is to actually run the model validation procedure. To do that, we would right click on fall of 2024, select validation. And then number 3 is run model validation. All right, so it says it is recommended that you make a TBEST export file of the transit system prior to validation. We just did that, so we're all good. We just say yes. And then this process will adjust the socioeconomic values for all scenarios in the transit system. As a result, all scenarios will have the base year adjusted to 2024 and model validation factors created based on the results of this process. So that's really what we want. And we just say, okay, and it will run through the validation. Okay. Transit system model validation complete. Fantastic. So what we see now is our Gatorville transit system now has our 2024 validation. So we know that it's validated. We can take a look at this to see that now our fall 2024 is base and read only, which made it the base year. So what else can we see? The validation adjustment factors are also available. So if we right click on fall 24, go to validation, you see that the menu has changed. So we can view the route collection still. We can also view the collection ridership, but we can see view collection level ridership validation factors. So these are the validation factors that TBEST calculated when comparing what TBEST estimated versus what the observed was. So you can export this list. You can always refer to it if you need to in terms of the overall validation. So we'll just say okay. All right. So that is all for this section. And so let's take a break.